Hello and welcome to another episode of the Full Force News Burst, brought to you by GeneralsJoes.com, with me as your host, Chris Clickbait McLeod, aka Diagnostic80. Joining me to discuss the recent reveal of official information from the G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie is Justin Takes the Bait Bell. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this news burst. Earlier today, we noticed an interesting story via histank.com that highlighted some already known but now officially confirmed info regarding the upcoming G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie. A casting call sheet by De Bonaventura Pictures was posted on productionweekly.com and confirmed a lot of the previous information we have been reporting on for the last few months. All of the basics were covered, including the facts we already knew, like Robert Schwenke as director, Evan Spiliotopoulos as writer, filming in late spring of this year, scouting Japan, Vancouver and Los Angeles for locations, and the involvement of both Paramount Pictures and Allspark Pictures. Along with that, it confirms both Lorenzo de Bonaventura and Hasbro's CEO Brian Goldner as producers, and in addition, we now know that Jeff Waxman will be the line producer for the film. The information also included a short description that only goes as far as describing the basic character we all know and love. That said, Snake Eyes is a silent ninja commando who dresses in all black, never reveals his face and doesn't speak. He stands out among the military anti-terrorist group and quickly establishes himself as the most popular. He has a special relationship with Scarlet, the team's one-time only female member, and sometimes carries out solo missions with his pet wolf Timber. His arch enemy is Storm Shadow, a ninja who is also his blood brother. The description is getting a lot of people talking, but we have to say it would appear that this is just a basic description of the original character and just gives an outline for reference. Justin, I'd like to get your thoughts on this story and what you make of that description first off, please.
Well, I think it's clearly, they're looking, I mean, it's a casting call, so they're looking for an actor that can probably portray, you know, the familiar Snake Eyes character, even if that particular version of Snake Eyes isn't going to appear in this film. That's kind of what I gathered from it. I mean, they kind of give an overall description of who Snake Eyes is or how he is best known. So I think I don't necessarily think this description means that's the version of Snake Eyes we're going to see in the movie itself. I think it also probably plays into the fact that they may be shooting for, you know, the first in a series of sorts, whether it's a series of solo Snake Eyes movies or whether it's a series of a Snake Eyes solo film leading into a G.I. Joe film. But I think they're looking for an actor, obviously, that can play the role now and potentially play the role in its more familiar connotations down the road. I
agree. Definitely. As well, we've had a lot of people kind of commenting on the posted it earlier today, almost like a little concerned and a little worried that, or jumping to conclusions, should I say, that kind of, you know, Scarlet and Storm Shadow are going to be involved. I mean, you can't really see an origin story without Storm Shadow being involved in there, which is, you know, you could probably assume that. Scarlet, I wonder how, if she is even going to be in it, how she would be portrayed. I mean, that's something as well that's, you know, it's going to be interesting to find out down the line. And especially when obviously we're going to be coming up to the casting very, very soon, aren't we? We're going to be hearing of who they've cast for the film. Exactly. So, I mean, not long before we get that info now?
I would think it would have to be. I mean, they're filming, it says, in spring of this year. They said, what, late spring? Is that what they were saying? Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably, you know, April, May kind of area. So I would think, you know, to start filming in 2 or 3 months, they're going to have to start casting pretty darn soon.
Because the actors are going to need to, like, go through lines and they're going to go through rewrites and all that kind of stuff even before the film starts filming. Yeah, and I would hope there'd be some training involved. I mean, I would think whoever's going to play Snake Eyes would have to, you know, have some sort of relative, you know, physical fitness and some kind of combat training and things like that. So I don't know if that's included in the shooting schedule or if that happens beforehand. Yeah, or it'll be Seth Rogen, and then we'll go through that process of getting in shape for the biggest role of my career.
Yeah, exactly. I do think, I mean, it's interesting kind of the way they do mention, you know, Timber and Scarlet and things like that in the intro. And I don't want to jump to conclusions myself. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they do find a way to tie Scarlet in the first film. I could see them doing that. I mean, we all know how when Hollywood takes a mythology that's been around for, you know, 40 years and compresses it for a 2-hour movie, they will sometimes, you know, tie certain characters together in a logical or somewhat illogical way. You know, see Rise of Cobra where, you know, Baroness and Duke knew each other. And I'm not saying it's going to get to that level. Hopefully, dear God, hopefully it's not. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them have Scarlet play a stronger role in Snake Eyes origin than she might have otherwise. That would not surprise me.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Two things that jump out at me at this description, which I find a little bit odd. Two things that I've never really even heard of before in JoJo. So if this is just an overall description of something, of like the basic character that is already, implanted in our psyche, I wonder why they'd say that Scarlet is the team's one-time only female member. That seems a very odd thing to write in here, unless that was going to be part of this particular film. So that's something that does stand out to me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it could just be a throwaway line, but back when it was the original 13, she was the only female. So I mean, they might have just been kind of using that to draw in some attention to it. I mean, I really don't know. It does seem like kind of an odd line to throw in there. I'm not sure what they were getting at necessarily.
Maybe it does have a lot to do with that original 13 setup. Maybe it has a lot to do. Maybe that's where they're getting their information from for this particular basic overview. I mean, I doubt they've got like tons of fans working on this. With the kind of level of knowledge that some of this fan base have. Yeah, I was going to say that I have, but I was, I don't want to get attacked. The other thing that stood out to me was, and this was because a few people picked up on it, and then there was a discussion, I should say, about what the term blood brother actually means when describing Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes. And I mean, when I read this, I did not immediately think related by blood.
No,
I was thinking it was the whole Arashikage clan kind of blood brother type thing, because I've heard that term used to describe the two characters before, even I think back when Larry was doing the kind of, back in the Marvel days when Larry was on the Marvel comic.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the whole notion of being a blood brother is somebody you're not related to, but you are close enough to be brothers, essentially. I mean, I think the cliche you each kind of prick your finger and put a trickle of blood and then push your blood together to be blood brothers. Yeah, pretty gross. Which symbolizes you're as close as blood can be without actually being blood. That's kind of what I got out of it.
Totally. So yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that that's more acceptable as a throwaway line to me than the Scarlet one. But again, I think having discussed that with you now on the show is kind of made me think that maybe they're just basing a lot of their thought process on the original basic character description around that original 13, which is totally fine. And I think this isn't some, I mean, we're obviously delving into it a little bit just to kind of maybe clear some things up, but maybe I say clear some things up, I mean, we don't know whether that description is the real deal or not, but at least this might help people, help the other people's thought processes on what those two particular lines mean. Finally, we've discussed a couple of times on the show about who we think would be good Snake Eyes actors. And you know what? I'm still drawing a blank. I thought before we recorded tonight, I was thinking I'm going to go on like the internet and I'm going to have a research on some kind of young actors out there at the moment. And none of them really stood out to me as kind of like Snake Eyes fodder. Are you still in the same boat there as well, Justin, or have you kind of maybe have a couple of others popped up in your mind since?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to make me sound like an old man,
we are.
I guess we are old men now, but I mean, I look at young actors these days and they all just kind of look interchangeable. They're all just kind of cookie cutter, at least to me. The only one that really sticks out in my mind is kind of a younger actor, that the kid who was in Baby Driver?
Yes. Ansel Elgort is his name.
Yeah, Ansel Elgort. That's a Hollywood name if I ever heard it.
Classic. And funnily enough, in Baby Driver, John Hamm's in that. And I would say that he would make an absolutely brilliant Flint down the line.
Oh, sure.
Like, obviously, a slightly older, more kind of war-grizzled. But, I mean, he's not. He's gorgeous, so I'd sleep with him. But, I mean, I think he'd be a great Flint. And he's a really good actor, too.
He is, yeah. I like John Hamm.
But, yeah, other than that, I'm drawing a massive blank on who could be the Snake Eyes of kind of, like, that era. That kind of... And again, we've discussed on whether they're going to touch on like a war setting that brings the two together.
Exactly. I mean, if you asked me to find, an actor who could play Snake Eyes in his 30s and 40s or whatever, I'd give you a bunch of them. And I think we came up with quite a few ourselves. But if you're really going back to kind of where it all began, you would think they would want, an actor that was on the younger side. Yeah. To kind of represent him as he was first starting. I mean, we've got there's Ezra Miller, there's Ansel
Yes.
Elgort, like
Yes.
we talked about. I mean, there's different people who could certainly do it, but again, none of them just really rings a bell with me. And who knows? I mean, all these films coming out these days, you know, are often the debut films of actors people have never heard of before, and so I mean, it could bring somebody new to the table that we don't really know about. You know, anything is possible, and you know, I don't want to automatically turn away any specific actor just, you know, without even really knowing who they are. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was somebody whose name we didn't necessarily recognize that, you know, was kind of getting their breakthrough opportunity.
Yeah, totally agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, Justin, thanks for jumping on quickly and chatting about this this info. Like I said, with casting around the corner, it's going to be interesting to start seeing that information come through, especially who's going to be playing Snake Eyes. But then on top of that, what kind of characters are, you know, other characters are in that film. It's going to be really cool to start seeing names being associated with code names. But anyway, thank you, Justin. That's it.
Sure.
Sorry. I'll wait for you to say sure, and then that's it for this installment of the Full Force News Burst. Thank you to my wonderful co-host Justin Bell. See you next time, and as always, full force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of these platforms with feedback, questions or to say, who do you think you are? A serious operation now? No, not even close. Look out for more of these news bursts that we are posting on the Facebook page from now on. Full Force.